So welcome everyone. So happy to have you here for this last final meeting on the last two chapters of the book that I think she ended the book with a bang with the rethinking assessment, but also the rethinking the IEP goals. Because so often I am finding in my consulting work that there are these barriers to us doing what I feel is best for kids, and people will say, but their IEP goal says this. It's like, but can we change the IEP goal then? Because it's not matching what we are intending to do, right? And just such an important communication piece of talking, and particularly including those math practices. It's not just the content, right? It's not just can the kids subtract two-digit numbers, it's also the practices. Can they model their thinking? Can they persevere? And what is their math identity? How are they feeling when they're learning math and confidently about themselves? And also that important piece of learning about themselves as learners. We're including them, building that identity and agency, which is just for every kid such a crucial thing. So thrilled to have you here. We're going to talk tonight about the last two chapters. So 14 on the assessment. Let me just share my screen, just the usual. We'll get this on the recording for those that aren't joining in. This is our 14 and 15. And then again, of course, just a reminder for the last time that this is the zero judgment zone. We're all kind and supportive of each other and having our if you renamed yourselves already, you're used to that. And this is our last meeting. So, but we're going to talk about 14. I'm going to have you go, oh, I didn't change that text. Excuse me. Those are not the right titles of the chapters. 14 is assessment. 15 is the IEP goals and reimagining those. But same pattern, small group for a little while. We'll come out and share. And then a small group again for chapter 15 and come out and share. So that is the schedule. Here is the interactive file. So for those of you that are, tech savvy, if you want to volunteer in your group to be the one that will make notes for us, the sticky notes are in there. Make notes for anything you guys are talking about, and then you can share with other groups that aren't in your group. And for also people who aren't here tonight, who are watching this recording, they can access that interactive file as well. And I'll just pop in there for a second and show you that this week is kind of like a light teal color background. We have the again, the reminder at the top, you have the Padlet always. That Padlet, I add more things to it. I added a couple of things today. I did the article she had mentioned about the IEP. There's a gentleman that she quoted about an IEP and talking about communication. So I found that article for free. So I added that to the Padlet as well. So that will always be there for you. And then also just the facilitation tonight, if someone's willing to kind of just be the conversation person, make sure everyone's getting a chance to chat and to talk. And then here are the next slides where I have the questions, the reflection questions that were for the chapter. So this is chapter the 14, thinking about assessment. Have you experienced it being a barrier for yourself as a student or as a teacher? What kind was it? Was there any of these assessment practices that you want to try? I thought so powerful thinking about, is this assessment helping me understand the kids' thinking? And does it help the student learn about themselves as a learner? So love those questions. So let me get you into the breakout groups, and I'll be popping in. All right, welcome back. Laura, before we begin, how many years of service did the people in your group do?
So for the three of us, 88.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's crazy, right? For three teachers.
That is.
Oh.
Well, the fact that so many veteran teachers are here tonight and willing to spend their time, even when school has begun or it's about to begin, to be able to talk about this, I think that's just a testament to your dedication to your profession and to the kids that you serve. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so curious what you were talking about in your groups in terms of assessment. So some of the questions were about, have you ever seen an assessment be a barrier for you as a student or a teacher or the students? Were there any assessments that you might want to try that were mentioned in the chapter? And how do the assessments help you understand the student as a learner and their true understanding? And also for the student and themselves. I do want to mention that in the chapter, she mentions Pam Sita and Kendall Williams' book, Choosing to See. Any of you that are in New England, the New England Math Group, the ATMNE organization, is going to be doing a book study this year. That for $5, you can join the book study on that book. And they're also talking to Pamela about joining in for one of the nights. And Pamela is going to be a keynote speaker here this fall at our fall conference. So, yet again, another person, educator mentioned by Rachel, they're going to be at our conference. So, we have an amazing lineup. I know, Marion, right? It's so exciting. But I cracked up out loud when I read that. I'm like, sure, of course she mentions someone else at our conference because I think it's going to be amazing. But anyone willing to share kind of the things you were talking about around assessments?
One of the things we talked about was how important, she talks about the, oh my goodness, I'm losing my mind. The, what is the word for actions around the math? The 8, I just
Math
thank you.
practices.
Thank you.
Standards
I'm sorry, I'm so old right now. Yes, it's math practices. We were talking about the idea of using the how important the math practices are, and you had talked about that too. And just about getting, and it was helpful to have things like the rubric for inquiry tasks and those things. But so what does that look like when you're assessing, and how are you having the same vocabulary with somebody that you're talking to, either the student or another adult, about what you're seeing? We just have a lot less practice with that. At least, I'm sorry, speaking for myself and in my school, we have a lot. We've looked at it, we've talked about them, we certainly talk about them with students, but it's sort of when you're talking about what does that look like to assess, and what would it look like, and this goes to later, but what would it look like as objectives for an IEP kinds of things, it's really kind of fuzzy for a lot of people, including me sometimes, about what does that look like. It's not necessarily a progression, but a connection. How do you grow in those productive practices as you go on your math journey?
So we did not follow directions or add our collective years together. So there's that. Anyhow,
that's not a direction, that's a Delora thing.
Yeah. Oh, so we loved the Totally 10 quiz that's in here from Kindle Brown and Pamela Seda, and we thought it was great. We loved the element of choice in it, and we spent a lot of time talking about. And then I just posed a question, like, it would be nice also to gather strategies around test taking that could be like best practices that could be applied to any assessment. So maybe teachers are overwhelmed and not able or interested in rewriting their assessments to follow that format, but could there be a page of things that we just attach, like your test might, we can read it to children, we can have them taking on a computer, we can have them taking it on pencil paper, access to tools and manipulatives, scrap paper. I don't know, like we just started talking about best practices in assessment. Like, wouldn't that be fun for there to be a little group of math friends that came together, or perhaps this already exists, and you could create a little thing that reflected UDL and elements of choice. So we talked about that, and I'd be happy to work on that if that sparks anyone's interest. And then I posed a question too about multiple choice tests, and how do we handle that, and how does that maybe give conflicting messages to students about what we're hoping? Like, how do you know that, and can you show your thinking, and yet we're all bound to these standardized multiple choice assessments. So I was listening to both Jane and Stephanie talk a bit about their experiences with multiple choice. We didn't really have a solution around it, but they were starting to pose some ideas, again, like show your work, mini interviews of kids to find out how they know what they know. And so I think that was the gist of it. We also identified strongly with the feelings of anxiety, and that when kids sometimes fail an assessment, they're not really showing what they actually know. And so that's a frustration.
Mm-hmm. So
Jump on
true.
in, friends, if I missed anything.
Group 3 also did not add their collective years. So apologies. We dove into talking about math rather than doing it.
I was picking on her. She put it in the interactive file at the top of the file. So I'm like, oh, that Laura.
That's awesome. one of the people in my group I loved gave a quote that was from a student. And I did not capture it perfectly, but I can capture the essence for you. And that the student was saying, sometimes the teacher thinks that I get it wrong, but I really do understand it. So I just thought that captured the essence of this chapter so much, that a student got the math and wasn't able to get it out because of the way the question was asked or the test was formatted. We
Yeah,
also would
so
love to hear
true.
from We'd love to hear from anybody that has done group assessments before and how they did it and what hints and pro tips you have for us, because we were interested, but felt like some of us in the group wanted to know more what that would look like for getting a good understanding of each student's math ability or ability with the concept while assessing them in a group. So we'd love to hear from you.
Hey, can I jump in?
Please do.
Yeah, okay. I'm driving, so I'm never sure if I'm actually coming through or not. So just that talk you were just asking like about group stuff, it reminds me of the famous Instagrammer, middle math educator Howard Hua. And one of his strategies before a test is to hand it out, pencils down. You could get up and talk with your assessment in your hand to anybody in the room. Like just kind of wander around. You've got 5 minutes. You've got all the questions in front of you. And then when those questions are up, you need to go sit down and pick up your pencil and take the assessment, which just seemed like what a great way to like lean into each other as a community, and kind of take some of the anxiety out of it. I don't know.
Oh, breaking up a little bit.
Some tips he always shares here, or just listen.
Yeah, you broke up we lost you a little bit, Jane, as you were traveling there with your voice. But yes, Howie Wah, you got to follow him on social media. He does so many wonderful videos of he's a college professor of elementary math teachers, and so he talks about different topics and the whys behind it. But he's great. It's just a quick snapshot social media thing. But yeah, he is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Jane.
Liz, I just want to add to, so I did 3 days of non-curricular tasks from Thinking Classrooms, and Friday and today were my first 2 days of curricular tasks. And honestly, I feel like as I'm watching them, I'm assessing them all the time. So it may not be a formal group test. Yeah, right. But like I'm watching and I'm listening and I'm like, okay, that group got it. Oh my gosh, that group, it was fourth graders ordering decimals today, and some were whole numbers and decimals. And right now, I just want them to say 4 and 9/10 and not 4.9, And but as I'm, one kid, there were like, it was a whole number and a whole number and a decimal and a whole number. And I heard the one kid say, well, I think this goes there because blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I just wanted to like clap, So yeah, I know what you mean though, like a formal group test. And I've never done that before, but yeah, Jane, I've heard Howie talk about that as well.
There's one quote that I loved. I think the big theme of this book, I think, is the multimodalities, right? Of redefining like what are we assessing and what does a student need to do or say or communicate that is valid in our eyes as an assessment? And I hear a lot from teachers of, well, I don't use manipulatives. All ages, people will tell me this, all grade levels. Well, they can't use it on the test, so I don't want to get them used to using them because they can't use it on that test. Loved the quote that Rachel had, that it's not about what the child can do without tools, because tools are a part of mathematics. Like that's what mathematicians do. So the overall goal of having them without a manipulative solve a problem as an abstract number like that, why is that the goal? How do we redefine in our systems, in our schools, what the goals are and how and what qualifies as a student, showing us what they know and what they understand. Yeah, that kind of really hit that one really hit home with me as well. But I also think about teachers and what we're asking teachers to do. And you have 25 or more kids in your classroom, and how do I interview every kid with every assessment to make sure that it was valid of what they knew? But it's just so important that we do get to that, having also the students, I think, self-assess, right? Have them be reflective of what they did and write for us a little bit about how did you feel this test went? Or I love that question you mentioned, Sue, like what question didn't I ask you that you hoped that you could? Giving that opportunity for the kid to communicate to us what they do know, so we can get to the bottom of it for sure. And how else can we empower and facilitate that journey for them, right? Uh, yeah, but it's like
I think
redefining what assessment is.
yes, that, because I think that if we moved to group assessments, we really have to redefine it in a way that was inclusive of all stakeholders, because I think some parents would lose their mind if that was attached to a grade.
Yep.
So a group assessment need, I don't know, it's almost sitting on top of an assumption that we've revamped our grading policies,
Mm.
right? Because that just raises that question for me. So it's 5 steps ahead of a lot of situations that I walk into. We couldn't start there because we still don't agree on what we're doing when we assess children.
Right.
So let's
So,
right. So we got to agree
it's so
why
true.
we are assessing, and how we're managing grading.
I wonder about, I mean, I don't know that, and I don't think you mean this. I don't think it's all or nothing. And so one of the things we've experimented with in my school the last couple of years is going through the practices with kids, talking about what mathematicians do, just what you're talking about, Annalise. And then actually during the week, part of their piece is to be ready to come and tell us, you know, a time that I added on to somebody's thinking this week, a time that, and they kind of had that checklist on their own, a time that I wondered about something, I didn't get an answer, a time I struggled and wasn't sure what to do. And so a couple of things happen, right? So, and the kids are keeping track of that. I mean, we talk about it. There's a whole bunch of sort of working up to this, and that's what we'll start. Our kids start next week. So we'll start this next week, but at different levels. And then kids talk about, and when they're young, they make little mini videos on Seesaw or something with us, so sometimes with an adult, sometimes with their special educator, sometimes with, you know, whatever, with the speech, with the AAC, which obviously everybody has that needs it. And it's really helped teachers start paying attention to the practices. And also parents actually do understand, at least we've had it. Now it's not our only grade, and it's like, you know, to your point, we haven't totally revamped it, but part of it is, you know, they need to be able to, mathematicians and classrooms talk, when you walk into a math class, ideally, you're seeing kids talk to each other about their math, explain their math, represent their math some way. And so kids are kind of held responsible for, not alone, but like, here's a time when I did that. And they're starting to think, am I doing that? Yeah. And now you have to be very accessible. And it's been more of a change in the teachers than the kids, but the kids love showing it. And they make these little videos they send home to mom or dad, and they like do a quick one and we just send it on email or whatever. And it's been very interesting, because the other thing that's happened is it's like, all of a sudden, most of the kids are saying, I never got to do X, Y, or Z. And it's like, right, I didn't really provide that this week. So sometimes we'll say, well, what we're doing maybe didn't give you the opportunity. And other times as a teacher, as an interventionist, I've thought, oh, you know, I didn't give you a lot of time to like independently choose your tools this week. So no wonder you couldn't talk about, I chose a tool, or you know. So that's it, like just a start, but it's helped teachers and kids kind of have that awareness.
I love that, Marianne. Love, love, love that. You know, it also makes me think about Peter Liljedahl's work of building thinking classrooms, or he talks about we assess what we value.
Yes.
So what are we valuing? If we're giving assessments that are just getting to one right answer, is that what we truly are valuing, or are we also valuing the processes that we're going through? So when they have the kids up at the whiteboards and doing a task, let's say, he'll do a rubric where maybe you've noticed the kids weren't sharing the marker very well. So
Oh my God.
that's what he's assessing, right? So having like a number line looking thing where one side says not sharing the marker at all, and the other end says doing really well sharing the marker, and then the board, and like that's what's being assessed today. Yes, they're doing a math task. Yes, they're working in on the content of the whatever content you're doing, but the assessment piece is you're assessing what you value, and what I value is that you're all working together collaboratively and talking about your thinking, right? So how often are we doing assessment type things in our classrooms that have the message of what we're valuing, which is not just a correct answer, but it honors the thinking, the processing, the representing of their thinking, as well as all the math practices, the persevering and the modeling the thinking, using structure or the patterns or tools in the communication, right? So you did that today, Laura. Was it what was your topic? Was it the marker or was it something else?
It was the marker because
Yeah.
last week, I shocked all their systems by doing this because they've never done this before. And I drew an arrow, like, array on the top, and on the right side, I put, took turns with marker. And I was like, okay, if this is where I want you to be, what do you think this side, is? And they were like, not taking turns with the marker. And I was like, all right, that's what I'm going to be listening for today. And by the end of our math time, I'm going to ask you to rate your team how you did with that. And thankfully, I remembered to do it, And it was great. It was great. It made them much more aware of, here's the marker, or it's your turn. Because all last week, I'm like, pass the marker,
Right, right.
Like, don't be a
Yeah.
marker hog.
I love that idea that we can be assessing for things we haven't normally thought to assess, like the what you care about behaviorally or working, sharing ideas, and the things that you are creating the norms at the beginning of the years. We're creating this climate in a classroom culture of we are all in this. It's not about how each individual kid is compete. It's like about no, we are better together, and it's so important. So awesome. All right. Was there anything else anyone wanted to mention before we go on to the last chapter of the goal setting with IEPs? How we can reimagine those? All right. So let me get you back in those breakout rooms. We're going to talk now about the goals in reimagining the goals in IEPs. How can we have those be not the barrier and feel like it's this imposition of teachers that even doesn't even match what the goals are of the kid? The intention of the IEPs is to provide access for students to grade level content, not that they get pulled out and do a 3-year below skill that they haven't mastered yet that was not going to connect to what they're doing now. And I loved the emphasis in this chapter about the progression of learning through grade levels. What is a priority core concept that is transcending the grade? It's a big idea like fractions that we can work on as an IEP goal, but also with the practices too. So I loved this chapter. So let me get you back in those breakout rooms. I'll get you back in 10 minutes.
You're on mute. And also, Liz, it got really dark really fast out there.
Yeah, that sure did. Wow. I'm just I'm adding the link to the book study for any of you that live in New England. I just found the choosing to see book study links. I'm adding that to the Padlet. Okay, so IEPs, reimagining the goals on the IEPs. I'd love to hear what your thoughts were of some of Rachel's ideas of and what they did of having the kids like self-reflect, like those rubrics that had the kids reflect on how they had done, and yeah, any conversations you had. So group one, would you be willing to share something that you talked about in your time together?
Abby, Tina, do you want to jump in? Do you want me to? You're like, yeah, you go, Laura. So I was saying that out of my 33 years, 9 years, I have been a special ed teacher. I'm not currently, but and when I, back in the 1900s, graduated from college, even though IDEA happened before I graduated, we weren't taught to write IEPs other than from like, what don't they know, all the way back down. So I love the way she is using the math practices and using it from the not only the asset based, but the like Annalise said, the main thing. What's the word? Say words.
Well,
It's
it's like
not
the core
yeah.
idea that is not just a specific skill of the grade, but it's a main idea of the grade as well as before and after grade levels as well. Like fractions is a huge gateway concept for a lot of kids for math. And so what better thing to work on that than if we were to do, as she mentioned, the student who 2-digit subtraction was still an issue, but they're a fifth grader, right? But fifth grade, like fractions is a major part of the content. So yeah.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this, but I'm also looking back now and realizing that I highlighted all of this, that she recommends that you choose goals that give the students access to the general curriculum of the current year, which I think is really important.
Liz,
Makes a
I
lot
love
of
how jubilant you've been all night long. I love it, Liz. You're like as rock on with everything we all say. And I love the fact that you're a special educator and it's resonating so much with you. And I appreciate you being here. And Laura's time as special educator as well. I was not a special educator. I never have been. So to be able to learn from you, those of you that have done the work and working with the kids, it's that much more powerful for me to hear from you, that it resonates with you as well.
It does make me feel like I should go back and apologize to every student I tried to teach math to when I was in the classroom, though, because just knowing what, I have learned in this book is just like, "Oh my gosh, where was this when I needed it?" So now I'll
Mhm.
get to share it with my special ed teachers,
Mhm.
and I'm really looking forward to that. One of the biggest things, I was saying in my group was I loved the, IEP goals that, focused on the actual problem solving. So, things like restating the problem, drawing a picture that could be used throughout the whole year across multiple domains in math, and really taught the student what strategies and behaviors they needed to be working on, and not just add 2-digit numbers or my personal favorites. No, not really. Time and money, time and money, time and money. Um, so these just seem so much richer and deeper and something that you could work on all year and across different areas of math. So loved that.
Mm. And of course, in the book is all these best practices, but I love how that rubric was not like, did I underline all the keywords, right? Did I circle this? It's like, no, that I could imagine someone taking that idea of a self rubric, but then making it in a way that's not best practice. Because by no fault, we're trying to help our kids. I had keyword posters. That's what I thought was best for my students, my general ed students. I gave them
Me too.
highlighters. I read every test to my fifth graders for years, and I helped them to highlight the numbers and the keywords. What was I thinking? I was doing the best thing. We do the best we can till you know more, and then when you know more, you do better.
I had the shameful experience while reading this book of cleaning out my teacher materials that I was going to hand down to my goddaughter, who's just got her first job as a third grade teacher, and she's so excited. So I was sorting through my library and my math manipulatives, and I came across my keyword posters on keys. Nonetheless, they were on keys. Um, and I died a little bit as I took those and just moved those to the trash.
Oh, that's funny. I love it. I love being on keys. That's classic.
One of the things Cindy and I talked about is how really, the framework for all of your goals and objectives. And I have functioned as a special educator for several years. I'm currently doing intervention, but I also had to do actually special education math goals the last 2 years because we had special educator leave. And I was lucky enough that I said I'm certified to do it and they needed me to do it. And I said, I'll make you a deal. I'll case manage some, but I'm only doing services in math. And they said, fine. And so I got to do math services for all students in my school who needed IEP math services, like specific, higher level stuff. And it was good, but it was good for me to have a challenge to actually have to write objectives and goals, and it's hard. But my point would be that in the book, the kinds of things that you're talking about are things that are really good for all students, and that's a good indication, right? And so some of what started to happen as I changed some of the goals over from counting money and math fact drill, was teachers saying, well, this would be good for everybody. And that's like, right, if we make part of that self-assessment, like in the back, I obviously didn't have this book last year doing it, but when I look at the self-assessment about what I did as a student, let me see, and then I look at on table 15.1, the one about students able to restate what the problem's about, attempted multiple strategies, use different representations. There's nobody that's not helped by keeping track of that. And if you're a teacher, help by like, am I giving opportunities to do that? So I might keep track of that in a more specific way for students on IEPs, but it wasn't so different from what everybody else was doing. And that's essential to part of the math piece. And the last piece, and then I'll be quiet, is I really need people to understand, and I'm getting better at it, that all of us benefit from their thinking. It's really, and it's not just like we're letting them come in and, we'll let them explain it, and then the rest of us will do a different, more efficient strategy. No, like, where is your thinking, Marianne, in what Laura just said? That's where the thinking happens, yeah? And we all get better at being mathematicians by figuring that out. And if we don't have students of a variety of needs and thinking patterns in the classroom, we're all worse for it. And I think that was the hard part. So by keeping track of things like this, and then what was the other one that you just mentioned? The page the grid, page 252, about just what did I do for each day? Like, did I read multiple times? Did I draw a picture? Did I ask friends for help? I can't see a world in which that isn't good for everybody to keep track of.
Mm-hmm. And might I suggest that we're also better human beings when we are inclusive and diverse and see value in every single person being a part of our community, right? It's it goes beyond just the math concepts into just community, for sure.
Marianne, you touched on something our group sort of got to just at the very end. So a lot of times students with IEPs, don't know they have an IEP because that's been kept from them. And so we're secretly collecting data behind the scenes. They certainly didn't know they had a math goal or what it was. And then as you get into the upper grades, how awkward is that for them to know? And as we started talking, we thought, well, why couldn't all students have a math goal? And each student knows what they're working towards, sort of like reading conferences where you're meeting with the student, you're discussing what you want those next reading behaviors, or in this case, math behaviors to be. And then each student is reflecting on their progress towards those. And it's not, IEP goals are for kids with IEPs, true, but all kids should have goals that they're working towards. Just a thought.
No, I love it. And that's certainly the theme of this book. And so I think that when I've shared this widely about this book, but I always say this is not just for special educators. Like, there's a misconception of, oh, this is a book for special No, it's for every in-service and pre-service teacher to read this book, right? It's about all of us reading this and understanding how you make it accessible for all students, because it's not just certain kids get certain things and other kids get other things, right? It's so true. So true. Was there anything else discussed in your groups? Oh, Sue, great.
We talked a lot about the complexity of this. I mean, even just asking what is the critical thing that students need to be working on becomes very hard for teachers to answer sometimes, because we are programmed with all the things. We've got all the standards and all the questions, and that's why time and money falls on there, because it is a standard. And so I think there's a real need for support and guidance around what this chapter is asking for. Like I don't think it should be underestimated that like everybody should now go and write those and do those, because I think, many of us here today are math specialists, and Marianne, what you described being able to do, what a gift to those students, right? You could take on all of that with the expertise that you have, but you're an elementary teacher in particular that teaches every single subject, and you're used to an IEP with a drop down where you just pick or throw darts at your standards. And now we're being asked to do something much more meaningful. There's going to need to be support and guidance around that, and groups of teachers studying that and truly practicing that together. It would become a practice and a study group and a focus. I think it's big. I think most people would really struggle if asked to do that on their own. They would really feel insecure, and it's a pretty powerful document, this IEP, right? It drives so much. And so if you're going to ask me to change that, I really need my math specialist, my administrator, my special ed director. I need us working as a team around changing our practice in a really supported way.
And I think that leads us right into like her last message of the entire book is the changing the systems, getting all stakeholders involved and having all stakers understand all of this. That too often we've got pockets of people reading books or doing some learning, but it's not the every stakeholder in that educational system. And then decisions are made at an administrative level. And there are districts out there that have so many schools in their district. I can't imagine how you can, as an administrator of 10 different elementary schools, if not 50 in some places, to communicate, to get everyone on the same page. I mean, a lot of my work and passions on fact fluency, and it's like, how do you get even everyone on the same page of what what fluency means? That it's not speed and accuracy, right? It's flexibility and efficiency. Like just that beginning stages of what are we talking about with basic fact fluency is a journey to get everyone to understand what it actually is and to agree that it's to one thing, right? So yeah, and I think that these are heavy chapters in terms of assessment and the IEPs, that how do we change these in ways that are best for all kids. But I certainly think that this book has gone a long way to get that conversation going and to share so many practical resources and things that are out there with very little cost to them that can help us on this journey. And for me, I know I'm going to be speaking this from the mountaintops wherever I go, of trying to get more people to buy this book and read this book and come to the New England Math Conference and learn from Rachel herself and all the people that she's mentioned in the book. I mean, we can change the world with one person. And so yeah, so important. Any things we've not mentioned that anyone else wanted to mention? And we're certainly coming at the end of this is our last session. So is there anything also anyone wanted to bring up, or a question you're still lingering about any of the other chapters? I mean, this is your chance to ask and discuss.
Hey, I just wanted to do a shout out for those 2 appendices in the back and how valuable those are. And yeah, sometimes it just seems like fluff, but I think they there's a lot to glean from them.
Yeah, thank you, Jane.
And I just wanted to thank you for doing the book study, because it's been so important. And my math supervisor has done this alongside of me. And so we're going to be able to really be working together and not in silos and bringing this to our district. So I'm just so thankful to have been able to pick all the brains of the wonderful people that are in the study and just have this opportunity to talk. So thank you for doing this.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you, Liz.
And I apologize if this came up before, so I can wait for the recording if it did. I was wondering, for example, this morning I saw one of our special ed teachers walking in. It was our first day of work today, and they and I said, "Oh, I have this book that I did a book study with this summer, and I was real excited, and I, told her the title. And she is not one who would be like, "Oh my gosh, not another thing," but that's the look that I received. And
Mm.
I didn't know if anybody had ideas for how I could promote it so that it was maybe received better. Maybe not, but
Mhm.
Well, maybe
so
just because it was the first day of school, Dawn.
that's what I'm hoping, is that it was just an overwhelming moment.
Right, right. Like maybe a couple weeks in we mention it again or slide a copy out like on your desk or might have just been a timing
Mhm.
thing. But it's tricky, right? People, the overwhelm is real. We want to be respectful of that too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The start of a year is so overwhelming. I remember that vividly. For sure. So yes, I would just give it a couple weeks and then try again for sure. And just, it's for everyone. It's not just for special educators, it's for everyone. For I wish all teachers and every in-service teacher, people who are in training to become teachers, would read this book because it's all encompassing of all the good stuff that I mean, everything that I share in my consulting work over the last many years that I've learned on this journey is in this book. That's why it was so validating as I was reading it too. I'm like, CGI problem types, they're in there, right? The equity work of Pam Ceda and Kendall Brown, it's in there. The counting collections routine, like things that I've shared for years about this best stuff, like she mentions it, and I did not have that confidence to know that it was good for students who have learning disabilities as well, right? And I also loved learning about the neurodiverse students. Like there's so much to the mathematics world. No one can know it all. So to be learning from that too, it's like, oh, it's just fascinating to learn about. But what we do in our classrooms in that universal design for learning, there are changes we can do in our classroom that provide access for everyone. And we're planning for the margins. We're not planning for the middle and hoping we can get other kids, right? We're planning for those margins so that we have access for everyone.
Dawn, will you have an opportunity to coach this person or give her feedback throughout the year or support with math?
Um, well, she originally was closer to my room last year for the first time, but now she's moved further away. So I'm not 100% sure. Um, and I apologize that I don't have what I do. I'm the mostly first grade math interventionist in my building. So I'm not even within her community kind of thing. So
I was
because it was like the special ed had a whole section that the rest of us didn't go to today. So I can make the effort, certainly, and I will, to touch base with her again and see what she thinks.
I was just thinking if you had an opportunity to coach or be in a room where she is, that if you were giving suggestions that came from here and could hook her that way and then say, oh, well, I got those from this amazing book. I'd love to share it with you. That might be your hook.
Good. I'll probably wait 3 weeks and then hopefully she forgot that I mentioned it to her the first day of work. And no, she is a very open person. It's just I probably caught her at the wrong moment.
She wrote an article that was in the NCTM, whatever the learning magazine is called now. I have it here, but Rachel Lambert wrote that one about UDL, math in the margins, and it's about a 3-page one. And I share that with staff because it's 3 pages, because it's written for the NCTM journal. It's written as a very accessible piece. It's certainly not everything in here, but it's a start about, and we had some good conversations as a staff. It didn't matter what grade level you're teaching, because that's K to 12, around what UDL for math really looks like. And that was a really good entryway and a very low barrier. People were not freaked out about a 3 or 4 page quick kind of thing. Obviously they heard about it UDL and but specifically in math. And then the second thing that I did is I currently our interventionists and special educators are meetings. We meet together and look at what are the types of things that we're working on, because of course there's a huge overlap, particularly in math, of because a lot of kids are just stuck in math intervention. I mean, math IEP goals, even though they actually don't have a disability in math, they just assume, well, they're not doing that well, so they stick them a goal, which isn't great. So we're working on that. So that's been a group that's working. And we started by just having everybody read the first chapter. And the special educators were just like, yes, this is what I'm trying to get people to understand about neurodiverse. You know, they had all the understanding about neurodiverse students and we're really excited. So sometimes just a little taste, because I do understand if you see a book, it looks thick and you're thinking, good Lord, like I can't manage it, but this is so readable. I mean, you know that. And we all discovered that as you started reading it, but just getting little tastes made people feel like they were at least not going to talk about it. And cross grade really made a difference. So it was not like you need to do X, Y, or Z. It was like, let's think about what this means for us together, me sitting next to you, because believe me, I got plenty to work on from this. And I'm trying to figure that out with them. And that was helpful for them to see that. So those are just a couple of suggestions. Rachel has the UDL one on her website free, so you don't actually have to belong to NCTM to get it. And then the other option that Annalise, you brought up already, but is her webinar that's free, even though it's in NCTM, if you go to her website and it's on your Padlet. Perhaps that's longer because it's a longer one, but that's another really accessible, and you can kind of listen to it way, so it's not feeling like, oh my goodness, a whole book. Those are just a couple of suggestions we've started. We'll see how it goes this year.
It's an excellent suggestion, Marianne. I find that's true a lot in what I suggest to districts as well. Like if you're doing a fact fluency, like have everyone read an article. So the attention's on the article and not personal feelings, that there's no judgment attached to our personal feelings. It's like, let's read this article and see if we can come to an agreement of the points that are made in this article. And where can we start from there? So I love the fact I hadn't realized that she had that article. I did just link that article. Sue found it for us. I put it on the Padlet as well. So the last column of the Padlet says, article by Rachel that might help others want to read it, help you persuade others to read it. So I put that there for you. And her webinar is linked on the Padlet as well. I was trying to put all the things she mentioned into one place. So feel free to share this Padlet widely. I mean, this is, I just think, a phenomenal book that can help us change so much. And give us these practical ideas to do it and the whys behind it for every single student. Yeah, awesome. Any other thoughts? No. All right. I'm going to stop the recording.